My name is David Morales. I am representing Colectivo Zapatista here in San Diego. The reason for this press conference is to bring about a critical dialogue on the militarization of the DREAM Act. We know that the DREAM Act will not be up for discussion in these coming elections, but we feel that it is important to address the issue now. The different community members and organizations that we have present here today are Luis Villanueva, a high school teacher from Mission Bay, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, PSL, the Association of Filipinas Feminists Fighting Imperialism, Refeudalization and Marginalization, AFIRM, American Friends Service Committee, AFSC, and Mujeres en Resistencia. We, Colectivo Zapatista, have put together a statement regarding the militarization of the DREAM Act, which we will share in both English and Spanish. Colectivo Zapatista opposes the militarization of the DREAM Act. Colectivo Zapatista denounces the militarization of the Development, Relief, and Education for Alien Minors Act, the DREAM Act. We, students and community members, believe that all students should have access to higher education and full unconditional legalization. The current version of the DREAM Act appears to be an educational bill that will create a path to legalization for undocumented students. But in reality, it is a tool being used to funnel our youth into the military to help meet recruitment quotas. To be eligible for the DREAM Act, undocumented students must meet certain requirements, such as being between 12 and 35 years of age at the time the bill is enacted, have arrived in the U.S. before the age of 16, had lived in the U.S. for 5 consecutive years, must have obtained a U.S. high school diploma or a general education diploma, GED, and be in good moral character, standing. These requirements narrow the number of possibilities for most undocumented students in the U.S. According to the Migration Policy Institute, 67% of undocumented students will not benefit from the college path that the DREAM Act currently offers towards legalization. Many people believe that the DREAM Act will provide a direct path to legalization. Rather, what the DREAM Act does provide is temporary conditional permanent residency for 6 years, which could easily be revoked. After completing either the educational or military option, students will still not be guaranteed legalization. They will have to apply for permanent legal residency. If a student does receive a degree from higher educational institution before the expiration of the conditional permanent residency status, he or she would still have to wait the full 6 years before applying for a permanent legal residency, dropping the conditional. Permanent legal residency does not guarantee citizenship. Citizenship can only be gained through the standard naturalization process. The probability of undocumented students completing the educational option is highly unlikely because the DREAM Act does not offer any financial aid. Therefore, undocumented students will opt for the more viable military option. Without financial aid or economic support from the DREAM Act, undocumented students will have to work full-time jobs that even then will not be enough to pay for rising tuition costs and basic living expenses. For most courses, 1 hour of instruction entails 3 hours of study time. This will not be possible for a student working a full-time job. Also, due to the current budget cuts, classes are being cut and offered at limited times, which may conflict with the student's work schedule. This problem can lengthen the period of time a student takes to complete an educational program and thus can jeopardize the completion of the educational options requirement. Economic pressures will force undocumented youth to take the misleading military option. These concrete realities will create a de facto military draft. The DREAM Act, as it is now, creates the illusion of a choice for students to decide on whether to take the educational path or the military path towards legalization. Due to the current economic crisis that currently affects the U.S., documented students find it extremely difficult to afford a public higher education, even if financial aid is provided. As a result, poor undocumented students will not be able to afford a higher public education and will have no other choice but to enlist in the military. The DREAM Act's military component requires a 2-year service contract. There is no such thing as a 2-year service contract in any branch of the military. Contracts are for 8 years. Undocumented students who do enlist in the military because of their immigration status will only be able to serve in infantry and mobile units. In other words, the front lines. The Pentagon is not only an eager advocate of the DREAM Act, but also the co-author of the bill. The military is facing a serious recruitment crisis and sees the DREAM Act as a potential solution. Senator Dick Durbin, sponsor of the DREAM Act, has said, I quote, "The DREAM Act would address a very serious recruitment crisis that faces our military. Under the DREAM Act, tens of thousands of well-qualified potential recruits will become eligible for military service for the first time." Quote, "Although many people believe that the wars will soon end, the reality is that the U.S. continues to invade other countries. Further, locally we have seen an increase in militarization in the U.S.-Mexico border. Undocumented youths who do make it through the military service will have to face the consequences of war, such as post-traumatic stress disorder, harassment and sexual assault in the military, discrimination, and lack of skills needed in a civilian society. If less than an honorable discharge is received after the completion of military service, undocumented youth are subject to deportation. Citizenship status is not guaranteed. Finally, the passage of the DREAM Act will increase the presence of military recruiters in our low-income high schools and communities, since they will now be able to directly target undocumented youth. The original version of the DREAM Act had a community service component that was removed in efforts to increase military recruitment. We demand the demilitarization of the DREAM Act and the reinstatement of the community service component. Also, we demand that undocumented students be granted federal funding to be able to receive a higher education. We demand that there be a clear path to legalization for everyone, without conditions. We call on our compañeras and compañeros who believe in education and legalization for all to analyze and challenge the militarization of the DREAM Act, and to create spaces for critical dialogue in our communities in order to find dignified alternatives. The struggle continues. Colectivo Zapatista.